all eyes are on that impeachment process. You've actually been referenced or cited, rather, in the impeachment article that the Democrats have put forward. What are the actual chances of successfully impeaching the president?
Well, understand, of course, that there are two phases. The first phase is that which will begin tomorrow, and that's what happens in the House of Representatives, where the House will vote on a single article of impeachment that has already been introduced. I expect that that article will pass. Indeed, it's got co-sponsors who already number sufficient majority to pass it in the House. The real question, of course, is what would happen in the Senate, and also when such a trial in the Senate would occur. There's a remote chance, I suppose, that it could begin before Mr. Biden takes office and Mr. Trump leaves on January the 20th. The more likely timing is going to be a trial that occurs after that point. And whether Mr. Trump could be convicted at that point is debatable. Now, before all the events on January 6th, of course, I would have said, of course, absolutely not. We went through this on different grounds a year ago, and only one Republican voted to convict Mr. Trump in the Senate. But the events of the last few days have been remarkably traumatic. Not only was there an ongoing attempt by Mr. Trump to overturn the results of a fairly conducted Democratic election, which he lost, but, of course, there's the violence that you see in front of you on the screen, and violence that not only threatened American democracy as an institution, but also threatened the lives of the people inside that building. And I think that may change some minds. Certainly there's some cracks in the Republican solidarity. There is a report in the New York Times today, whether it's correct or not, it's hard to say, that Mitch McConnell at least thinks that Trump did commit impeachable offenses and is happy that the Democrats are proceeding with impeachment. Whether that would translate to Republican votes in the Senate remains unknown. It would require 17 Republican senators to actually join all the Democrats to form a two-thirds majority to convict President Trump.
And Trump obviously maintains his remarks before the Capitol riot were appropriate, rather. So this is a political process, not a legal one. Despite that, how difficult is it actually to improve that sort of incitement?
Well, as you say, it's a political process, not a legal one. It's a political process that has the trappings of a legal trial. And it requires, of course, that the House lay out charges and support them. I think the report that the House Judiciary Committee staff presented today is quite remarkable, not only because of the speed with which it was put together, but its comprehensive character. And it's pretty darn convincing, certainly to a rational and objective mind. The real question is of course, politics. The question is, as angry, as threatened, as distressed as Republican lawmakers may be, do they nonetheless think that this kind of dramatic break with Mr. Trump would imperil their own political futures? And I don't think we can know that. I will say that while I didn't think it was possible for them to actually convict him, darn it, maybe. And, of course, the important consequence of such a conviction is not merely its symbolic value, because, and of course, it's not going to have any effect in removing him. He's going to be gone at noon on January the 20th in any case. But the potential consequence, the significant practical consequence, is that if they convict in the Senate, they can then go on to vote to disqualify Mr. Trump from ever again serving in an office of, as the Constitution says, honor, trust, or profit, which means, practically speaking, he couldn't run again in 2024. And that, I think, would be, as Shakespeare said, a consummation devoutly to be wished. We'll see whether it can actually be achieved.
Do you think that's the real aim here, given how close it is to the end, that it's not about symbolism, it is about stopping him potentially having another uprising come later on?
I think it's both. I don't think it's hyperbole to say that in the last couple of weeks, shockingly, unbelievably, we came close to losing American democracy, or certainly to having this country, degenerate into warring factions. Closer than I like to think about. And that deserves a response, not merely just let the guy get out of office and move on. I don't think that's appropriate. And it deserves a response, in particular from the institution that was most threatened, the institution that was physically attacked, whose members were under threat of their lives, the institution that was also in the course of ratifying the results of the central ritual of American democracy, any democracy, that of reaffirming the will of the people and providing peaceful transfer of power. There was a direct attack on that, and Congress needs, I think, to respond. I hope that it will respond sufficiently to ban this dangerous man from American public life. But even if it doesn't do that because Republicans are too afraid, I think it's a process that needs to play out. At a minimum, there needs to be a condemnation by the American Congress what's happened here and the beginnings of some kind of reckoning of our fractured politics.
Frank Bowman, thank you so much for your insights this afternoon.
My pleasure.